Hi. Today we're talking about what it means to relapse and what it means to believe that you're cured from an addiction. I personally have had the same type of thoughts go through my brain about my own alcoholism, and I've relapsed. It's funny how the brain can come up with messages and cues that tell you one thing. It's just not true. My brain likes to tell me that if I haven't drank in a whole long time, I might be cured. It also likes to tell me that maybe I'm not an alcoholic, even though I have a ton of evidence that tells me I'm a drunk. Now, right now, I am a recovered drunk. Lush, drunk, those words don't bother me. Alcoholic, I'm okay with it because that's what I am. But we need to talk about the lies that I've been told by my own self and how I've come through one time and then unfortunately and fortunately had to come through again.
Hello and welcome to Dean Redeemable. I am your co-host, Cleveland.
And I am Kenneth Handy.
Together, we're here to share the story of a man who spent years on death row and how his journey led to redemption, faith, and transformation.
And today we are tackling the subject of recovery and relapse and recover again. I've recovered for over 26 years and I've also relapsed. And then I've also come right back into recovery. I was an alcoholic from a very young age. I committed some very bad crimes, some horrible crimes, while drunk, while using heavy duty drugs, and then went to prison. While in prison, it didn't stop me. I found whatever means and ways that I needed to find to put drugs and alcohol into my system, and so that I could change my reality, my mood, or even my mind. And now, after 26 and a half years, I took a drink and immediately had help. And I took that help and I was able to jump right back into recovery. Of course, my co-host, Cleveland, most people have not understood yet our relationship, but that relationship is she's my niece. She's married to my nephew and she's a dear friend. And she's also the mother of two beautiful, beautiful children and that I love dearly. And I'm very thankful for her because had it not been for her and my other niece, I wouldn't have been here. That relapse would have been effective to maybe take me out. So today we're going to talk about this. We're going to talk about what happens in thought processes, emotions, and whatever else comes up. Glad to have you here. Let's start it off.
All right. So, very first question I want to dive into today. Sorry. Before you entered recovery the first time, what was the biggest lie you were telling yourself, and what was the moment or consequence that finally forced you to truly be honest with yourself?
The biggest lie that I told myself, basically, that I was like everybody else. I was normal because I had no clue that I couldn't be normal. I grew up in a household that a lot of drugs and alcohol and very abnormal behavior went along. But if you grow up in that kind of household, it's just normal. That's what happens. Um, for me, that meant that I practiced what everybody else did. Lots of drugs, lots of alcohol. Yet I had consequences from a very early age from drinking. And those consequences were I was kicked out of my house at 12 years old. When I was 12, I got drunk on a New Year's Eve and created a lot of havoc for my biological mother. The next day, she drove me to a place called Juvenile Hall in Las Vegas, Nevada, took me in, told them to take me because she didn't want me, got in her car and left. So that would be the biggest lie. And the consequences for me didn't stop there, but it never hampered me from drinking and drugging. The only thing that ever stopped me or put a pause to my drinking and drugging was finally, after 11 years being in prison and incarcerated as a direct result of drinking and drugging and a murder of a man who did not deserve anything that he got, was that I found myself doing the same things in prison that I had done on the streets, and it made absolutely no sense. Why that happened, I think, is only a God answer.
You faced significant legal and personal consequences, including your incarceration. Can you describe the difference between the consequence you received and the consequence you felt, the emotional or spiritual cost of that lifestyle?
Absolutely. The consequences I received was incarceration. I went to death row at 19 years of age for the murder and armed robbery of my victim. And that was one consequence. It was physical in nature. Mentally, I had to deal with the idea of I was a dead man walking, as the term says. Yet, even more emotionally and even mentally, I was bankrupt. I had nothing. There was nothing for me to contribute to life in any way. I could not be deemed redeemable. There was no redemption for me unless it was spiritual. I know that we talk about, you know, how Christ can save your soul, but in societal matters, society had nothing for me. Sort of like, what society does now. They do the same thing a mother does. When your child acts up, you spank their bottom and you put them in a crib. Well, for somebody that commits crimes against society, they spank our bottom and put us in prison. But emotionally, I had two feelings. And then the third was to get high. The first feeling was happy. The other one was anger. And the third was I needed to get high to change anything else that I felt.
What did the concept of hope look like to you on day one of recovery? Was it a flicker, a desperate plea, or a slow realization that a different life was possible?
Ooh, it's a very tough question. The day that I jumped into recovery originally, I was in a type of church service in prison. I had not been going to church. Hadn't gone to church for years in prison. I mean, my whole lifestyle in there was to get, find, and uh, continue to get drugs and alcohol and to survive. And then that fell down. I was doing the same things inside of prison. I was breaking the rules or laws, was hurting people inside and my family outside. And I had come to an end. I was broke. I owed people money inside prison, which is not a good thing. Not sure if you can imagine, but when you owe somebody who's known to hurt somebody with a shiv, shank, knife, whatever you want to call it, and you don't have that money, there might be a physical consequence. Mentally, there could be consequences of, the ramifications if you live or if you die. I was a little afraid that if I lived, I might be hurt so bad physically that not only having a life sentence at that point would be intolerable, but also there was the emotions of I was just dead. I had no feelings. I didn't even have feelings for myself and had to question whether I was a sociopath, which would be a good question if you're continuing to hurt people inside and out after you've already destroyed your life and a lot of your family members. But the flicker of hope came a night when I was asked to a church service, and I went. And when I got there was some guy who'd come in from the street talking about how he had been out. He'd been free, but he also used to be incarcerated. And he was telling me of a lifestyle and a life that I could only dream of. I could only imagine getting out and being free. And he said that it could happen for me. I didn't know this guy from Adam, but for some unknown and I think completely spiritual reason, I believed him that night. And I think and I believe that it had to do with the spirit that he had been somewhere that I had been. And I was believing that if this guy could change, then maybe I could. And I put my faith in a power greater than myself and jumped off the deep end.
So before we go to the next segment, I want to talk a little bit about your family because, as you mentioned with the very first question, you were pretty much set up for it in a way, right? It's sort of like um, addiction. And I want to talk about your family just a little bit. Obviously, whatever you don't feel comfortable sharing, but can you tell us a little bit about what that dynamic looked like for you before you were kicked out at 12?
Mm, sure. I was born into a family that is riddled with addiction. My father had been in Korea, got hurt in Korea, was a war vet that had Purple Hearts and all this. But while hurt in Korea, he needed pain medications, and they sent him the Food and Drug Administration sent him massive amounts of painkillers through the mail, and he got hooked on them. I mean, he got hooked on them so bad that he couldn't live without them. He was a mailman and a decent man when not using drugs. Never drank. And my mother had been a lady who had been married before. She was what I would consider a raging codependent. The only thing that she thought could fix her life, her emotions, her mental state of being was another man, a husband who would make everything right. So she married her first husband, had a couple kids, married the second husband, which was my dad, had a couple of kids. My dad died when I was 5 years old of an OD, a heart attack induced by taking drugs, and was found in his truck while hunting. And then she went on to marry person after person after person. My mother was married 7 times. But growing up in my home, everybody used alcohol and drugs in some form or another. Um, it was dysfunctional. Of course, I only know that now. In the state of there was never any realistic moments of love and care. I could be told, and I'm saying this from one specific experience that I remember, that how much my mother loved me, and then 5 minutes later hit me over the hand with a cast iron skillet. Okay, screaming and hollering at me because I didn't pick up dog poop.
Lord.
Yes.
So were these experiences, was the addiction, was it something that was just out in the open, or was it something more that was at the very least trying to be concealed from the sight of children? And then obviously the effects of the consumption were very evident, or was this just something that really was just out there? And when, you mentioned your father died when you were 5, was that something that you were made aware of? And the reason that what caused his death, was that something that you were made aware of, or was that more something that you came to find out years later?
Well, I can answer that one quickly. Yes, I found that out years later. No one told me why he died. They just said he had a heart attack. It was only that when I was old enough and able to search out the death certificate that it had mentioned the massive amounts of drugs in the system. So, of course, that is what induced the heart attack. Growing up, drugs were the only thing that were hidden, because, I mean, to be honest, the stigma of drinking was not very high, in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s. Even now, it's not that much. And I think, thankfully, in a way, that drugs are not stigmatized the same way now, because maybe there's more help for people. But, back in the 70s and 80s, you didn't want anybody to know you were doing drugs, and it starts off, I started smoking pot at 8 years old, you know, uh, but when I had my first alcoholic drink, it was around the age of 12. In my house, there was always alcohol available. It wasn't available. We weren't supposed to have it, but we did take alcohol. And then once you get that feeling and that's what you want to feel like, because I didn't feel like it from any other thing in my life, well, that's what I chased after. I'm chasing a feeling because it made me feel like I always thought I should feel.
It's interesting that you say that because I remember a very specific instance in I was, I believe, 14, 15. Um, my brother had just bought a bottle of tequila and he left it on the counter. And I thought it would be a grand idea to drink most of it by myself. Again, at the age of 14. So, but I remember from that point, I I felt awful. That experience for me was awful. Now, did it put me off of drinking alcohol? No, but it definitely was not a feeling that I felt like I wanted to feel. So I think that goes to speak to maybe the, like you mentioned earlier, the maybe lack of love and emotional connection with the people around you. If you don't have that, then I
Yeah,
think it's a lot easier to succumb to that sort of feeling because it's a feeling. It's a strong feeling. So
absolutely.
it's,
Um,
it's
just
interesting to
just
know.
to add on to what you just said, the lady who actually raised me into any kind of normal thinking, not my biological mother, but the lady that I lovingly refer to as my mama, she had a similar experience in college, and she got drunk over a bad relationship one time and passed out behind a dormitory. And it scared her so bad that she never went that far again. It was not a feeling. But that's the kind of things that I now realize happens to normal people or normal drinkers, normies. I don't have those thinkings and feelings about drink. My mind, my brain tells me, "Oh, just take a drink, you'll feel better. Take a drink, you'll feel better." It's the biggest lie that goes through my brain. And after that lie, you know what happens? Take one more, it'll get you there. It'll get you right
Mhm.
where you want to be, right where you want to feel.
You're making me question if maybe that is something that I have to take a look in within myself as well, because I've felt that. And I definitely know every single morning when after I've been drinking heavily, I wake up and I feel miserable. I'm like, I never want to do this again. And, I've never done anything under the influence that I'm like, oh, that was something that I don't recognize myself doing that. Like that's something I don't see myself doing, but because I was drunk, I did it. I don't think that's ever been experienced, but from what you're saying, it makes me think perhaps there have been moments where drinking has just been an outlet and to temporarily make myself feel better, but it's all been a lie.
Yeah.
It's a lie. So,
It's amazing how the brain will do that to you. We get messages based upon experiences, and those messages just keep playing, and it has to do with, I think, the neural pathways that are already made in our brain scientifically, and that unless we create or have created new neural pathways, we don't have options. And that's the great thing about having new and better experiences, that we create lots of neural pathways so that we have options. What I've learned is that at one point when I was drinking, I didn't have any options. It's all scientifically, physically, that's what I was programmed for.
So addictions come in various shapes and different methods of consumption, I think is the correct way to
Sure.
put that. So how do you think that the dynamic in your family affected the siblings? Because as far as the siblings that I've met or the family members that I've met, I would say that there is an underlying something that I'm not entirely sure what it is, but that does very much make you guys prone to that sort of addiction or any sort of addiction.
Yes, I would agree. Addiction is insidious as a disease because, like we were just talking about neural pathways, it gives us one option, and it becomes a cure, or I'd like to say it's our solution. The problem is, for people like me, that solution doesn't work. You know, um, my brain may tell me that another drink will make me feel better, but it neglects to tell me that another drink will also help destroy my life. It will also help me make bad decisions. It will also help me to disrespect and dishonor my wife. It will also tell me that uh, taking a physical action, violent or other, against someone is an okay, necessary, or appropriate response. See, the only one that I can hear, because of those same neural pathways, emotional needs, mental problems, or dysfunctionalities, as we could call them, uh, they only hear one thing: the big voice that says, "Take a drink, you'll feel better."
After 2 decades of success, the risk of complacency can be real. Looking back, were there subtle shifts or compromises in your spiritual life or daily routines that created the opening for the lapse?
Yeah, I've done a lot of work in this area, so I know in coming back, I had to look at all this stuff. Um, there were there were specific things that either I stopped doing, which also led to me start doing older patterns and behaviors because of what we were just talking about, neural pathways. So first of all, I stopped trusting God in the same manner and ways that I had been trusting him before. It wasn't that I wasn't going to church. It wasn't that I wasn't praying. It wasn't that I wasn't worshiping. It was that, or going to meetings, 12-step meetings. It was more that I started relying on myself. And one of the things that has me sitting here today is that I didn't do this. I didn't get myself out of prison. I didn't get myself off death row. I didn't get myself anything that I have or need in life by my own power. Everything that has come to me has been a gift. I don't know how to have relationships. That's not a natural thing. I don't know how to convince people that I'm worth a shot at freedom. I don't know how to work and be responsible and be a good employee or be a good family member. We just talked about my family. All I know is get a drink, you'll feel better. Or I know how to do things that make other people unhappy with how I did them. I stopped connecting with God, and I had some financial problems. And I thought, well, you know what? I know how to go make money. And I'm, because I'm doing it legally, There's no problem. I will tithe my finances. God'll be happy, and I'll get myself out of financial problems. So that was the first part. Second, I moved in doing that, I moved to Texas and lived with my family in Texas, which was you and Michael and the kids. And I stopped going to meetings like I was here. My sponsor here told me, hey, you need to get really connected in Texas like you were here. Not just go to meetings, but spend quality time with people who were recovering there. Go to more meetings and find us another sponsor, a temporary sponsor out there. I didn't do those. I went to a meeting, I think, about once a week while I was there. And of course, things started slipping. So if I'm not doing the things that keep me there, well, I'm got to be doing something else with my time. So I was overworking myself. As you know, I was working about 60 hours a week.
Yeah.
And then I'm up at night because I can't sleep because my system is on overdrive. And then I'm making decisions that not only harm me, they seem okay. And of course, my brain tells me, oh, if you do this, this will be okay, because I'm already in a state that is not healthy. It's not normal. And then I'm doing things that disagree with the most important person in my life, which is my wife. I'm doing things that are not okay for my recovery. And then I don't go to meetings all the time. I figure I'll just look in one online. I'll be okay. Well, and then I stopped listening to God. You see, for somebody like me, I can't live without a relationship with God. Other people, maybe they can, you know. I don't suggest it, you know, it's it's not the most healthy, wise thing to do in the world, but if you can make your life happy, be my guest. But we're here today because we're saying that there is a power greater than yourself that will help you through life, that will bring you hope, and that you can rely on. Um, and then I make the big mistakes.
I think it's very um important that I say that you have asked me continuously that every time we are getting ready to film an episode or to do anything related with the pod, to really quiet my mind and ask for guidance. And one of the things that I've really tried to keep telling myself, because I feel like at the very end, that's kind of the message that we are trying to give here. I hold on to a song that my dad used to stick to us a lot when we were younger. And it must be in Spanish, but I'm going to translate it. And it's Todo lo puedo en Cristo que me fortalece. And it all translates to I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. And
Mm.
so that's kind of been I have a
Philippians
notebook.
4:13.
Yeah. That has been I have a notebook that I take notes on and that I write down ideas for the pod and whatnot. And every single time I am struggling to either keep motivation or to get through an idea or to just struggling with whatever it might be, I sing that to myself because I know that what he wants us to do, we will do if we just give ourselves to him. If we just let him.
Do, do our part.
Yeah. If we just let him be in our lives and be in our hearts, everything else will fall into place.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that because that was something that I just kept hearing as you were saying, I didn't get here. I didn't get to being a free man. I didn't get here doing a pod, to having a wife, to being who I am all by myself. I didn't do that by myself. I didn't do it. And you're right. And it's everything that we do is we can do the things that we want to do, and they can become infinitely better if we just give that to him.
Hmm. I like the way you sing it. Sounds prettier.
All right. So, next question. Can you articulate the internal conversation that preceded the one drink? Was it a momentary impulse, or had your mind been trying to justify it for some time? How did the 26 years of knowledge contend with that fleeting desire?
Hmm. I want to try to articulate it. I
Here,
think I think that
before
the
we get started,
voices
can you paint a picture of that moment? Just that moment.
I can, but I need to start with something a little earlier.
Okay.
We talk about the voices in the messages that run through our brain. Well, I think that no matter how many years of recovery that I've had, the voices never completely stop. And anytime I'm not on what the fellowship that I belong to says is the spiritual beam, that the voices get a little louder, you know? They quiet down when I do spiritual things to put in my spiritual bank account so that I lean on that instead of myself. But the voices just got a little louder. And every time I wasn't doing the right thing, they got a little louder. And I think the book of Alcoholics Anonymous, which I've read a number of times, talks about a story of a man in the 20s and 30s who um, basically he relapsed after sobriety. He had everything to go going for him if he just stayed sober. Yet he got drunk anyways. And when he talked about the relapse, there you could tell in his story that there was a story behind the story. There was another alternate being kind of directing and guiding towards the moment of relapse that was saying, I had a resentment, I had a pity party, and all of a sudden I seen other people taking a drink and feeling better, like I said. So for me, that day was Father's Day. And I don't have any biological children of my own. I always wanted some, thought it would be completely out, and it is for physiologically. I do have three wonderful stepdaughters, and yet I'm not as close to them as I want it to be. Sort of like you want something, but it doesn't show up in the time that you want it to. So on that day, I had bought that 6-pack for your husband. Your husband doesn't have the same problem that I do. So I felt like that was okay. Unfortunately, I'm sitting there eating carne asada and I'm enjoying the day, but all I can think about is nobody's telling me happy Father's Day. I'm far from my wife. And of course, all the voices are talking to me. And then I'm looking around and everybody's drinking. They're having a good time and they're feeling, at least they look like they're feeling good. And the impulsive thought comes to me and says, take a drink, you'll feel better. Take a drink, it'll be all right. And then the voices we talked about in the beginning of the episode. Maybe you're not an alcoholic. They come in and they give me evidence, and let's call it false evidence appearing real, that, hey, you've been sober 26 years. Maybe a drink wouldn't hurt. And we go back to the neural pathways that I already had. And before I knew it, I walked to the fridge and I grabbed a beer and I drank it. And as I'm drinking it, I kind of know you are messing up big time, buddy. And I also know that I don't care. I have to push it down because now I'm afraid. I'm afraid of what I've already done.
Mm.
So I don't know if that answered your question or if there's something you can add on to get to the point.
No, no, I think only you know what went through your mind, what you're feeling for that day. And all I can say, or all I can really ask is, in that moment, from the people that were surrounding you, from the people that knew w- or had an idea of what you were struggling with, but not the depths of it, what was something that you wish we would have known to help you?
I don't think there was anything that you could have done to kept that from happening. I think it was something that had to happen for me today. Now, back then, I would have said, "You shouldn't have had me around alcohol." Whatever. That doesn't matter, because there's nowhere in the world I can go. There's not alcohol and drugs. Nowhere. If I went to the depths of the coldest parts of Alaska, some savior would show up with a bottle of rum, you know, to warm my body up. No, it was something that had been brewing from all the stuff that I've already mentioned to you. Not connecting with God, not listening to the mentors and people that were in my life to safeguard me and have me to continue to do the right thing on the right path. And then slowly listening to the voices inside, because the first thing about addiction is it isolates you. And how it isolates you is that you may be around a room full of people, but inside you feel alone because it's only my thoughts that I listen to. I don't really be a part of. I just look like I'm a part of. Yeah, I'm the guy that walks into a room of 20 people and feels alone.
All I can say about that is you don't have to feel alone.
Mhm.
And asking for help, talking to people is always a way to avoid that kind of regret.
You're absolutely correct. So, to be honest, that's where you come into this story. Uh, I'm sitting there at your kitchen table drinking a beer, and you and my other niece are having a conversation at the sink about me drinking a beer. And you come over and ask me what the heck, let's use that as the word you used, or am I doing?
Was it me or was it Caleb? That sounds like something Caleb would say.
It was you.
Okay. Well, guess I was mad that day.
Well, Kayla was mad at me because we'd already had an argument about
Oh,
something.
that's right. I
Yeah.
remember.
Do
I
you
remember.
remember now?
I do
Yeah.
remember. I do remember. Oh, but was there a specific feeling that you had when you took that drink of like a loss of something or immediate regret that instantly signaled to you the gravity of what you had just done?
Yes. The problem with having recovery is that it will ruin a whole lot of good drinking. It really will. So you have to think that of all the voices in my head at that moment, the voices that were telling me what was going to happen next was is it's one of the sayings that we have in recovery is that if you take a drink, the second most important thing you're going to lose, which is my recovery. Of course, my life would be number one, but the second most important thing was my recovery because it bolsters my life. It makes life worth living. And so that message is now going through my head. I'm very thankful that somebody, because I feel like you were used by God in that moment to say, "Hey, wake wake up, sleepy boy. You're not paying attention." You know, and I knew I was wrong. I knew that I was an alcoholic, but now it was a struggle. The fight was, do I finish this beer? Which there wasn't much left of it anyways. But do I finish this beer or do I take a turn right now? Because it might be the last chance I have for a turn. And so I dumped the rest of it out, tossed it in your trash can, and I went in my room for a few minutes. And I started praying, not feeling it, but knowing that I was in a really desperate state. And I know I'd lost my 26 years, you know, and I think that shame started filling me up. But I think now, right then, the shame was powerful, was very powerful. Now the shame is not so powerful because it it kind of jumped me into a better reality than I was then. One thing that I have learned in this new process, in the new recovery, and it's not really new, it's the same recovery. It's just I now have some truths in front of me that help me that I didn't know I didn't have before. See, I didn't think, Cleveland, that I could relapse. You get so long in recovery, you have so many good things happen. You don't feel horrible and bad anymore. You don't have loved ones um, yelling at you. You don't have that many financial woes. You don't have the law looking for you or wanting to do something with you. You have a job. You own a thing or two. And all of a sudden, pain, which is a great motivator, it's just not present, you know? But pain is a great motivator. I had to force myself to rely on the messages of recovery. And thankfully, because you knew that I took that drink, I called my wife that night and told her I drank. That led for me to have to call my sponsor and tell him I took a drink and to get some new instructions that if I did not want to take another drink, that I better follow.
So I want to take a moment to talk about that a little bit because, like I mentioned before, I have experience with being around people who have an addiction and that knowing that, it's not just the one drink because one drink leads to another and another drink leads to another thing, right?
Right.
But I remember within myself those days, I was struggling because there was other things going on with somebody else that we knew that, and I have to say this, were to me made me question my character. It made me question my values. It made me question where I stood because, in a way, I felt like I aided and abetted something that I knew was wrong. But in order to not feel that shame, I had to find a way to justify. And that moment of me calling you out, I do think that it was something that was coming from more than just me because I did have a very brief split second doubt of even saying anything because it felt like to me like, well, if I didn't do it for this other person and if I didn't follow up with that person, why do I feel like I have the right to do it with him? Why am
Yeah.
I why do I feel why is it that I feel like I'm I'm entitled to tell him anything. He's a grown man. Why would I inject myself in something that is none of my business? But like I said, it was a very like split doubt, and then something just kind of like told me, okay, you need to do something because at the end of the day, you don't want to lose somebody. And I wish I would have said something before to this other person because that loss was something that truthfully rocked me to my core. And it really made me question my integrity and made me question who I was. And so I kept looking back at that moment where I did say something to you because it made me feel like I did do something for someone.
I know the situation you're talking about. And I think sometimes, you know, we get it confused that minding our own business versus being a person in someone's life who might have to say, "Hey, do you see which way where you're going?" You know, it's hard. It's a hard struggle. Some people don't want you to,
Mm.
or maybe they do, but they don't know how to ask. I gave you permission, you and Michael and everyone in my family. I gave you guys permission to speak to me in that way. And you guys knew that. I've told you and Michael lots of times, tell me, because I'm aware that I don't see everything about myself. That's one of those good things that the 26 years of recovery did give me. See, I grew up a lot in those 26 years. Was I perfectly an adult? No, I'll never be an adult. I have never, no intentions of it. Forget it. Overrated. Um,
Very much so.
I am legal though. I mean, I can do things, drive a car, you know, I can vote if I want to now. Um, but I think everybody struggles with that. I think there's a lot of people that listen to this and say, I don't know when that time is to step in, you know, but I'd rather step in badly, than not step in at all.
Yeah. And I mean, I can say this now because it did take me a little bit to because I like I said, I've dealt with addicts before. However, I had never suffered a loss because of that.
Mm,
And at least certainly not as close as this person. And even though even though my relationship with her wasn't as direct, I do feel now that I did very much so step in multiple times and tell her, and I remember saying this to her because this is one of those moments that I have to hold on to every time that self shame kicks in because I don't feel like I acted the way I should have acted at the whole situation. But in regards to the addiction, I do remember telling this person, whatever it is that you're looking for at the bottom of the bottle, whatever it is that is making you reach out for that bottle, you can forgive yourself and we can get you the help that you need, but it has to come from you. And if in this moment you tell me, I don't want to go through this anymore, I will personally take you to rehab and I will be with you every step of the way, supporting you. But it has to come from you because if it doesn't, you're just going to fall right back in again. And in and the news of this person's passing, I broke down and I in the that conversation became very hazy. That conversation, that moment became clouded by a lot of other things that I'm not very proud of that I did. And I just felt very, very ashamed. But I remember talking to Kayla and, she had to bring me back to that and tell me, remember this conversation because we did have it. I was there. And so, from somebody who suffers with addiction, I want to ask you what is the best way to try to get someone help? Because I know that it has to come from them, but I feel like maybe there was more that I could have done or said. I'm just not entirely sure if that is true, and if it is true, what that is.
Mm. Well, that's a tough one. The hardest part in recovery is to step over dead bodies, Cleveland. And I don't mean that figuratively. I mean that literally. It is. Um, Before I relapsed, I had 3 sponsees who died. Direct result of active addiction. Just next week, there's going to be a memorial service for somebody in my home group who died as a direct and indirect result of my disease. Um, it's very hard. Um, but you reach out a hand and you let people know it's there. And at that point, they have to reach out and grab it. I've been told a lot of things in recovery, but one is you can't pull what somebody doesn't push. And you can't push what somebody won't pull. It just, you can't get it there. So, yes, you reaching a hand out is important. It's as much or more important that the other person grabs that hand. You know, um, you have to decide you want something different. And that's what we do with Theme Redeemable. If you've decided that you want something much different than you have, then there's people out there that will help you. They are wanting and waiting to help you. There are loads of places that will help you, but you have to want it. It's one thing for me to say, oh, I want to be sober and I want to have a job and I want to have a wife and I want to have kids, but it's quite another for me to take the actions necessary to have all those things. It's quite different, you know. We were talking about in the last couple of episodes what active hope was. Active hope means that I practice doing something different, something that I hope is going to bring me a different result to the life that I have now. Me and somebody very dear to me were talking about some woes from other people in our family who have they made bad mistakes. Now they have a choice: do something to fix it, or get all the consequences that you can get. It takes. We talked about bottoms, Clev. I don't care. There is no rock bottom except death. I can find all the trap doors and every rock bottom that you can give me. If I don't want it, you know, lots of people. That's the big thing about being in prison. The pain makes you want to change. But when people stop yelling at you and the law ain't looking for you, you get some food in your belly, you get some sleep, and things are going a little bit better, and you look like you could have a brighter future. All of a sudden, you don't have a reason not to do something. The voices start again, and they tell you, "Hey, you just had a rough go of it. It's maybe you're not an alcoholic, like it told me. It's gonna come. I have those neural pathways." The voices. Yes, I'm crazy. Yes, I absolutely am. I am insane, is what the 12 steps tell me. Okay. And if you really look at the biblical narrative, you know, you think of Paul. Paul was a persecutor and killer of Christians. He met Jesus Christ. And then 14 years later, after he's been serving God in that way, he's telling everybody he's the chief of all sinners. Yeah, he was crazy too, just in a different way, you know?
So, how did your faith or spiritual connection, the one you built over the 26 years, show up in the immediate aftermath of your relapse? And did it feel like a support system that kicked back in, or did you have to actively fight to reconnect with it?
I did have a personal struggle in reconnecting inside and with God. Um, thankfully, in a moment of desperation, a desperate prayer, came out, and I'd made enough bad decisions in a short period of time that made me believe that I was about to destroy the most important relationship in my life. And in that prayer, I heard God tell me, you can't fix something in South Carolina when you're in Texas. And so, as you know, I packed up my car, I quit my job, and I came home. And in that, I also reconnected with my home group, my sponsor, and found a lot of love and support from the members of my fellowship. They reached out and they told me, we love you, we're here for you. So now I had to do my part. And my part was I had to start getting back into meetings. I had to start sharing. I had to go to some counseling. I had to do a lot of stuff that I actually had to do to physically do. There was a lot of painful, emotional things that had happened with that most important relationship. And there was a lot of hurt feelings from people who love and care for me. But I had to tell them that I wanted to be and do something different than what had happened in that short period of time. And they took a chance on me. And that's why we're here today, because I was deemed redeemable once again. What happened was I got honest. The first step into changing your life is always going to be getting honest with the people around you, telling them what you think and what you feel. Because if nobody knows what you're thinking and you're feeling, they can't respond to you. They can't be there for you. But these people were my family. John, my wife, Rebecca, my sponsor, my grand sponsor, my sponsor brothers. Basically, they reached out, and there was a lot of shame that was going on inside of me. That was the hard part about reconnection, because I thought that I was lost. I thought that this was not going to stop. I heard so many stories, seen so many people not be able to come back. And of course, I still had the voices in my head that I'm fighting every day. It was a tough battle. And all I had to do was just follow the simple directions. For me, the simple directions were reach out, do what I was told to do, which for me was go to meetings, use your sponsor, you know, work some steps. And for me, steps are spiritual principles that tell me how to live life and then help somebody else. And that's what we try to do. And that's what I'm doing today. I'm hoping that Deemed Redeemable touches you guys. I'm hoping that somewhere you can see something of you and me that's the same. I'm hoping that somewhere you can hear hope and freedom in what we're telling you that will help to change your life, that will help to have you reconnect with the power that's greater than you in your life, that will help you connect with the people who love and care about you and want to see you live your life to its best, its fullest, and where you're happy and complete.
Right. So I'm sure that's a very um, clear message for anyone struggling um, or in early recovery. But for someone who is in early recovery, who fears that one mistake means absolute total failure, what does your story illustrate about the nature of forgiveness and the ever-present availability of
I think one mistake does not define a lifetime. I don't think 100 mistakes defines a lifetime. My sponsor and my grand sponsor pulled me aside a couple of times after I got back because I was dealing with this shame of every time I went into a meeting, they said, who has 90 days sober? And I'd be like, that'd be me, which is very hard because I had built a lot of ego and pride over having so many years sober, and to come in like I was a newcomer. Now I'm just the bottom of the heap again. And I had to relearn some things. And my sponsor, my grand sponsor pulled me aside and said, Hey, man, you didn't lose 26 years. You gained a lot in that 26 years, and it's never going to go away. Now you just have to realize where you stepped in a pothole. Get your foot out of it, go fill the pothole, and go back down the road, man. You know, it's a drink. It's not a death sentence. And in my brain, that's what it was. It was a death sentence for me and my recovery. Yet today, on the other side, with a lot of work and a lot of looking at hidden thoughts and feelings that I didn't even know I had, or I was covering up with excusing or minimizing or rationalizing, instead of looking at things and saying, hey, this is how I really feel about certain things. Hey, this is what I really want in life. And this is what I really don't want in life. See, those are important questions that I really never tackled. I just did what everybody said and thought I was doing what the best thing for my life was. I have, there's something written on the back of a recovery medallion that says, to thine own self be true. It comes from Shakespeare. And it's really, really, really powerful because in order for me to be true with you, Cleveland, or anybody else that I love or care about, I got to be true to myself. And if I can't be true to myself, I'm not going to be true to them. And who wants that? I want real relationships. I want people to love me. I want to be able to screw up and not think, oh my gosh, everything's over. Somebody will stop loving me or caring about me. If you screwed up, Cleveland, I wouldn't stop loving you. I wouldn't stop caring about you. I'd want to help you, and that's the way most people are. Well, let's say most people who are godly, good, or rational people feel that way. And I can tell you, uh, I had some people in my life that were disappointed with me, and I had to live with that. And that's okay. I'm going to disappoint a lot of people along the way. A lot of people disappoint me, but that doesn't mean that I don't love them. I don't care about them. And you people out there who have gone through a lot of addiction problems, I don't care if it's gambling, sex, drugs, alcohol, it doesn't matter. Okay. You got a problem. You got a hole in your road. Get your foot out of it, cover up the hole, and go on down the road. Mm. Hey, you are loved and you are cared about. There is somebody who cares about you. And as long as you are breathing, you are deemed redeemable. We deem you redeemable. Reach out to us. Put something in the chats. If you see our message, hey, reach out. We'll reach back. We'll do our best. I'm not going to say we're going to be perfect because I'm not perfect.
All right. So you mentioned, I feel like that's a very beautiful place to leave it. But very last thing you mentioned, your sponsor told you, you did it. You didn't lose anything. You gained. So, what is the single most important, painful, and necessary lesson that this brief relapse taught you about your addiction now? Because the foundation of recovery is about learning. So, what can you share with us?
I'm not alone. I go into meetings and I meet people all the time that relapse. I have a buddy right now that I've watched him relapse numerous times over the last few years. And at first it was really hard for him to come back, you know. Um, and then he'd put a month together, you know, and then he'd relapse. Then he'd put a couple months together, but he'd relapse, but he kept coming back. He just kept coming back. He kept saying, look, I'm trying. And I had no choice but to love on him because I knew where he was. It was easier for me to say, hey, he's trying. He wants it or he wouldn't have come back, you know? And I think that, I mean, I've watched him put over a year together now, and I'm so proud of him. I'm so proud of him. He doesn't know this, but if he ever watches this, he'll probably figure out it's him. But I mean, just to say, hey, it doesn't matter how many times I slip and I fall. I'm not dead yet. I can get up and I can keep moving, you know? That's all it is. I mean, all of us are on this rolling orb through space, you know, wondering what the next step is. Well, the next step is just connect. We'll figure it out. Life can get better, and it's gotten better for me. I've been back over a year now, and a lot of people that I love and respect that were disappointed in me, they're happy that I'm where I'm at now. And I think that's what it's all about. You know, relapse, it's said often that relapse is a part of recovery. And I used to not believe that. I didn't. I thought, well, it don't have to be. And it doesn't have to be. That is the truth. You can be a one-chip wonder. You can get clean and serene and stay that way. It's very possible. But then again, maybe you don't. Okay? Doesn't mean it's over. It just means you had a hiccup. You know, my pride and ego, I used to really lean on it. Oh, I've got 26 years. Oh, well, now that doesn't mean as much to me. To me, it's like, I got today. You know, today I can make good, wholesome, honest choices. And no matter what happens, you know, my sponsor says they can't eat you. You know, if you mess up, get up and start over again.
Thank you for listening to Deem Redeemable. Join us next time as we continue exploring stories of redemption, faith, and transformation. I'm Cleveland.
And I'm Kenneth.
Until then, remember, every journey matters, and if you are breathing, you
You
too
are
are
deemed
deemed redeemable.